Hi dear students, for the first episode of Let Me Tell You, I want to introduce you to a very special company of mine during this Holy Week. It is this John Piper's book titled Lutando contra a Incredulidade. I hope you see this. I think this is visible. Yes, this book of John Piper, which its original title is Battling Unbelief. To summarize this Let Me Tell You episode, this book tells us that Christian people have to deal with some sins: anxiety, pride, unappropriated shame, covetousness, and lust. These 5 of them of common sins, but I didn't mention them all that the book talks about. Well, as I mentioned those sins, John Piper suggests us that to fight against these sins, we cannot live. Firstly, we cannot live with those sins. Of course, they are potentially existent within us. They are potentially involved within us, but we must struggle against this. That's why he calls this book Lutando contra a Incredulidade, battling unbelief. We have to battle to win and to get into this battle to fight against those sins. Something that is very interesting about this book is that John Piper said that we have to fight fire with fire. The fire we must fight against is sin's promises that are deceitful and temporary, with the fire of God's promises, which are truthful and everlasting. This is stunning because we are fighting fire with fire. And how do we do this? He said that we took God's promises to fight. We believe God's promises to us, and that promises us a truthful pleasure, and we set this against sin's promises. It works like that. We are putting sin's promises against the wall, and we're saying to the sin's promises, do the same as God's promises can do, because God's promises are infinitely superior rather than sin's promises. You know, sin is deceitful. You say, do this, watch this, and lie here, don't tell the truth in order to you to get a good pleasure, but this is deceitful. Yes. Well, I want to summarize here, but I have so many things to say about this book. It was very interesting for me. During this week I was reading this, and it's not even mine. It's from a friend of mine, this book. Well, another thing that I found interesting about this book is that the author here emphasizes the sola fide. Sola fide is literally through faith or by faith. This is a way through heaven that Christians might walk. They have to walk through faith to the heaven. And in this world, how we fight against all those sins that I mentioned: anxiety, pride, unappropriated shame, covetousness. We fight believing God's promises. So this is faith, believing God's promises. Believing in God's promises, what the author called future grace. It's interesting. You will find so many times this expression, future grace. Well, it's very interesting because we are taking all these sins, we are believing in God's promises to fight and to battle those sins that are somehow the unbelief, which is in the title of this book. And in that way that John Piper is emphasizing the faith and the sola fide, which is through faith or by faith, he tells us that we must urgently believe God's promises, because he's not lying when he said that everything works for the good of everyone that loves God. He is not lying. This is the truth. He is not lying when he said that he will handle our needs. This is the truth. And the good thing is that it takes us for the everlasting life. He is just calling us to live through faith, and at the same time fighting against those sins. With what? With faith in His word. So we have to read His word. This is the first episode of Let Me Tell You. I hope you enjoyed this. I wanted so much to share with you this book, and if you find an ebook, you can read it also. Well, goodbye and cheers for watching. Happy New Year.
A luz brilhou por tua graça, filho da